Queen Elizabeth I, who reigned as Queen of England and Ireland from 1558 until her death in 1604, died on March 24, 420 years ago, aged 69 at Richmond Palace, a favourite residence of the Virgin Queen. The only daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, her funeral was held at Westminster Abbey, and there she was interred in a tomb shared with her half-sister, Mary I. Elizabeth reigned for almost 45 years and was the last monarch of the Tudor Dynasty, having died childless. Her reign is famous as the Golden Age, for its blooming of the arts with the origins of Renaissance drama and for producing the most famous playwrights of the era, such as William Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe. Welcome back to History Rediscovered. In this episode, we discuss the actual cause of death of Queen Elizabeth I. Furthermore, we will discuss opening the coffin and burial vault of Queen Elizabeth I. Elizabeth was a notorious ruler, remembered for her role in the Protestant Reformation and the defeat of the Spanish Armada. But there was one aspect of her life and history that would elude experts. For centuries, the cause of Elizabeth's demise had been the subject of debate. Before her passing, she refused permission for a post-mortem to be conducted, leaving the explanation of her death forever shrouded in mystery. While there have been many theories, none have proved conclusive. Some say the Queen may have died from blood poisoning, brought on by her use of lead-based makeup. Others suggest Elizabeth suffered from pneumonia, infected tonsils, or cancer. And one of the more peculiar suspicions was her death was caused by her coronation ring, which had grown into her flesh having not been removed for the 45 years of her reign. Now, though, pathologists claim to have determined the real cause of Queen Elizabeth I's death, having originally been thrown off by red herrings. During Elizabeth's final years, with her health gradually deteriorating, close friends passing away and beauty fading, she started to suffer from bouts of melancholy and what we would call in the 21st century, depression. The Queen was coping with the loss of her advisor and several close friends, including her long-serving lady-in-waiting Catherine Howard and former favourite, Robert Devereux, Earl of Essex. In 1590 the Queen lost one of her closest attendants, the elderly Blanche Parry. She was the Queen's chief gentlewoman of her privy chamber and keeper of the Queen's jewels, a highly respected position. Blanche had known Elizabeth since she was a child and was exceptionally regarded in her service, being treated as a baroness with gifts of material luxuries and land. The Queen was devastated at the loss of these important figures, which thus furthered her reclusion and rendered her out of touch with the court she once dominated. An unforgettable moment that would change Elizabeth's life would be the execution of her former favourite, Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex, on the 25th of February, 1601. Only a year into a new century, Elizabeth was compelled to execute Devereux. He had been tried before the peers of the country, charged with high treason and exposed as a traitor for planning a rebellion which included planning to kidnap the Queen. By February 1603, Elizabeth was mourning the loss of her friend. Although frail, depressed and almost 70 years of age, the Queen retained her stubbornness and authority. She refused to rest and stood for hours upon hours. No matter the persuasion from her attendants, the old Queen would not take rest. Perhaps she was lamenting her impending death. The Queen's ladies became so worried they eventually spread out pillows on her bedchamber floor in order for the Queen to sit upon if she decided to do so. During these uncomfortable final days the Queen became disarranged and disordered, with feelings of guilt and regret over the execution of her late cousin, Mary Queen of Scots. According to Sir Robert Carey, she shed many tears and sighs, manifesting her innocence that she never gave consent to the death of that Queen. She began to be plagued by ghostly visions of people she had previously known, including the late Scottish Queen and her throne rival Lady Catherine Grey, whose son Edward had a claim to the throne. It soon became obvious that the Queen was dying. Her ill health mixed with a delirious and depressed state of mind drew her death closer, and after almost constant persuasion by Lord Admiral Charles Howard, she finally made the decision to retire to bed. Not long after, with the Queen resting in bed in a senseless condition, the elderly Archbishop Whitgift was instructed to come to her bedside and pray for her immortal soul. He tenderly informed the frail queen of the joys that awaited her in heaven. She expressed regret about ordering the execution of her cousin Mary, Queen of Scots, during her final days. Sir Robert Carey, her first cousin, recorded that the Queen shed many tears and sighs, manifesting her innocence that she never gave consent to the death of that Queen. Her mental health struggles saw her retreat from public life, and she was also battling painful physical ailments, including rotting teeth that had led to abscesses in her mouth and pus-filled glands. The Queen suffered hair loss and refused to be attended to or bathed. It is said she resisted lying down out of fear she would never rise again, taking to standing in her bedchamber for 15 hours before collapsing on the floor. She lay speechless for 4 days before her servants finally managed to settle her into bed. Finally, on the 24th of March, 1603, Queen Elizabeth I died. Following her death, the Queen's Lady of the Bedchamber refused to allow Elizabeth's body to be subject to a post-mortem. Some argue that this was a way to safeguard the Queen's reputation as a virgin. However, a modern-day autopsy carried out by Home Office pathologist Dr. Brett Lockyer has concluded it was pneumonia that ultimately took the Queen's life. Appearing in the second and final episode of the Sky History series Royal Autopsy, Professor Alice Roberts, who previously helped investigate the death of King Charles II, and Dr. Lockyer focused on the last Tudor ruler. Investigating the spattering of clues that had been left behind, they explored the number of health issues that could have killed the Queen. Professor Roberts investigated the effect of Elizabeth's makeup, which she was said to have had a full inch of on her face at the time of her death. The Queen was obsessed with projecting an appearance of youth, believing it would aid her in maintaining power, so used white makeup made of vinegar and lead. She pasted this onto her face day in, day out, for years. It was a toxic metal, Professor Roberts explained. The lead-based makeup, known as Venetian ceruse, or the spirits of Saturn, was classified as poison 31 years after Elizabeth's death. Professor Roberts and Dr. Lockyer claimed the makeup did not kill her, though they did say the Queen had been suffering from the effects of chronic lead poisoning, which resulted in significant hair loss and rotting teeth. They were in terrible condition and there was some dental abscess and gingivitis, Dr. Lockyer said. The Queen's final months must have been agony, Professor Roberts added. They went on to speculate that the bacteria from infections in her mouth could have contributed to her demise. Dr. Lockyer said, "It does cause a lot of pain because the infection was building up and it was not going to have made talking or swallowing very easy for her. It's an end-of-life condition effectively, her body is slowing down and closing down." However, though it was a sign she was coming to her death, it was not the cause. Professor Roberts and Dr. Lockyer considered the suspicions regarding Elizabeth's coronation ring. After 45 years on the Queen's finger, the ring had to be cut off. A swelling to her left hand indicated her heart was not functioning properly, with the two experts also questioning whether sepsis had developed because of this. Elizabeth was thin and emaciated at the time of her death, and the recent autopsy, based on the symptoms she was displaying, showed the Queen had a fluid build-up in her lungs, and her heart was not pumping effectively. When it came to making his conclusion, Dr. Lockyer insisted he was sure that pneumonia had killed the last Tudor Queen on March 24, 1603. That was the reason she died. "I think the infection in her lungs possibly entering into her system gave her blood poisoning," he said. The heart failure could have very well been tipped over. Her heart was working to a point until it encounters something which meant it had to work harder to get blood around the system, so the cause of death is going to be bronchial pneumonia, without a shadow of a doubt, but the heart failure had an added role. Professor Roberts explained that red herrings had thrown off the investigation, but hundreds of years later, the debate over the death of the infamous Queen can, it seems, be put to bed.